Thursday night back, I think. But for us to be able to go back to our roots, so to speak, and be back on ESPN on Thursday nights is something that I've been really proud of this year with SRX. It is for sure how I got noticed and got my opportunity in both Indy Racing League and NASCAR. So excited about the fact that we got back on ESPN and the reception from our peers in other forms of motorsports, being able to tune in Thursday nights before their hectic weekends start has been something everybody's enjoyed. So excited about that. Wish I was a little closer to my friend that's also going to be speaking here in a minute, but man, as he picked up where he left off last year, Ryan's done an awesome job. He's been very, very consistent, and that's what's got him in the point lead. So, it's been one of those seasons where there's been a lot of ups and downs and ebbs and flows, and a little carnage, or a little more carnage than normal along the way. But definitely want to tip of the hat to all the people in SRX, all those crew guys that for 6 straight weeks basically don't go home, don't see their families. We go out there in one night and take perfectly good race cars, and unfortunately bring some of them back tore up. They keep their heads up high, they get packed up, they go to the next town where we're racing, get unloaded, fix everything that we've destroyed, and get us ready for another great show the next week. So George and Sandy and Hawk and everybody from Skip Barber, from VP Fuels, Goodyear Tires, Ilmore, everybody has done an amazing job of carrying their weight and doing great things this year that have provided for some great races. So excited. It's kind of bittersweet. It's here we are on the eve of our last race of the season, and part of me is super excited because I think the crew guys are absolutely wore out from this year. But at the same time, we've had a blast these last 5 weeks, and I've loved racing with the entire field. It's been cool to have guys come back that are full-time racers that we haven't raced with for a while, and as always, being able to race with guys that you've always wanted to have the opportunity to race. And some of them are new and some of them are old and retired, but just the fact that we get to race with such a diverse group of race car drivers is something that's always exciting to me. So I feel like it's been a successful season. There's really 2 of us that have a mathematical chance at this, and Ryan's definitely got the upper hand in that, but we're going to do everything in our power to try to do everything we can to catch him at the end of this thing. So we've seen it just takes one corner and one moment that can change the complexity of it, and we want to make sure that we do everything we can to put ourselves in a position in case something were to happen that we can try to capitalize on this.
Thanks, Tony. Brian?
Yeah, for me, it's I'm just so proud and honored to be a part of the series. I call it high-profile short track racing. We've all grown up one way or another short track racing, whether it was in quarter midgets or go-karts, and moving up to quarter miles, dirt and pavement, and to be racing in this series with some of the best drivers in the world is just an honor. And with Camping World, Bass Pro Shops, and all the people that support it, for me, South Point is on my car. South Point Casinos in Las Vegas. The Gone family has been huge supporters of auto racing for years and years, and for them to be a part of the SRX series and me to drive that car is really an honor. And racing against Tony for a championship, what can I say? I mean, we were what was it, 15 years ago? We were kind of joining up to be teammates, and here we are years later racing for a championship in the SRX series. So look forward to going to Lucas Oil Speedway for the last race. Kind of bittersweet, like Tony said. Never been there. Look forward to seeing it. Heard it's an amazing place, but it is the last race. So echo Tony's thoughts on all the work that goes into it with all the crew guys and all the effort from top to bottom, the people that are behind the SRX series to make it happen.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. So we're going to start taking questions from the media. If you have a question, please raise your hand in the chat and we will go through them in the order they come in. And we will start with Kyle Dalton.
Thanks, guys, for joining us. Hey, Tony. So you wrap up the 3rd season of SRX tomorrow night. And I'm just curious, where you think the series might be in, say, let's say 3 or 5 years, if you think that it might be possible to increase the number of races on the schedule and potentially increase the number of drivers per race.
The hard part, and that's been one of the most common questions. The hard part, like we mentioned, is with the staff that we have and the amount of people it takes just to get 12 cars up and down the road for 6 straight weeks is extremely difficult. It's everybody sees the 2-hour window that we're in on Thursday night and sees what happens, but they don't see the behind the scenes. And trying to do more than 6 races with the staff that we have, I mean, we would have to have a huge financial investment to grow this to where we could either add more cars to the field or add more races to the schedule. I think we've done a really good job of being able to accommodate the races that we have and trying to keep doing all the stuff that we're doing with the staff that we have. But it's taken everybody to do it. Like we mentioned, Skip Barber and Ryan mentioned, our friends at Bass Pro Shop with Johnny Morris, and most of all, Camping World, who absolutely has made this happen for 3 straight years in a row. So couldn't do it without them.
And then after last week's race, you made the comment about Haley Deegan being a hell of a dirt driver. So naturally, her fans take to social media and they go, well, maybe Tony will give her a chance because she wants to race in the Xfinity Series. So she is a Ford driver. I'm just curious if you've thought about something like that, if it might be something you might consider in the future, considering you obviously have a relationship with her, bringing her into the series to race SRX.
Well, I think it's funny. We just mentioned that she's a great dirt racer and everybody wants me to put her in a pavement series. So that part doesn't really make sense to me. But, Haley has such a huge following. That's why she belongs in the SRX series, and she is a huge talent. But it's, trust me, we got enough irons in the fire just trying to get through what we've got right now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle. Going to go to Jonathan Laster.
Hello, everybody. First of all, congratulations on a wonderful 2023 season. I have 2 questions, the first for Ryan and then one for Tony and Don. Ryan, you came so close 1 year ago to winning the championship. What did you take from last season to bring to 2023 to potentially be the SRX Series champion? And the question for Tony is we saw in the opening wreck last week at Eldora. Have y'all started working on 2024 contingency plans in case of a major wreck like that? That way, no drivers have to sit out of the main.
So the first part of that question is, it was just like this year. It was an honor to compete last year, and I guess learning really the cars, a little bit of the tires, even though the tires different this year, being a Goodyear radial instead of a Goodyear bias ply, and then just how the racing goes, how the format is, all those things were so new last year. It's not that I hadn't done those things, but I hadn't done it in this format against these drivers. So really having knocking the ice off or knocking the rust off, whatever you want to call it, from last year for this year has definitely helped. And just somewhat being a little bit lucky. You look at last week, we were the car in front of Austin Dillon. So if we could have been the car behind him, that would have changed a lot of things. That's just part of racing. And, I think that it's just, from my standpoint, I think being consistent and knowing that I need to be there in the end, at certain racetracks like Stafford, kind of saving my brakes, saving my tires, and trying to be smart as a driver, right, is, was a challenge. And, we're fortunate to be, pretty good up there.
Yeah, and I think from our side, from the SRX's standpoint, I mean, last week was a product of, the grill opening, getting caked with mud, and the water temperature going to 300 degrees, which swelled the water line and ultimately burst. And that's what created the big problem and the big crash in turn 3. But, that's something that obviously we'll pay attention to that this weekend. We'll make concessions to try to ensure that doesn't happen again. I think it's impossible to try to come up with a scenario or contingency plan if 5 or 6 cars get caught up in the same wreck like that. It's definitely not a scenario that's normal by any means. And unfortunately, we just don't have enough cars. I mean, we don't have a car for everybody as a backup car. The goal is to not have to use backup cars if we don't have to. But, compared to the IROC series before, if you crashed out of the race, you crashed out of the race. The good thing with what we try to do with SRX is keep these drivers in the race. And if something unfortunate happens, try to create a scenario that gets them back on track. So, we made some changes to how we do the format this year, and not having extended cautions if somebody's having a problem in the pits, of how we have the ability to just have them one lap down if we go back to green, and then they can get back on the lead lap at the next caution. Trying to find ways to keep these drivers engaged and in the race and active. And unfortunately, we just don't have enough cars and staff to be able to guard for a backup car with everybody. I mean, theoretically, we have 2 heat races and a main event. I mean, you could theoretically go through 3 race cars and 3 events very easily. So it's just not feasible, but we will do everything on our side to ensure that what happened last week, we control that variable, and we'll do the best we can to make sure and ensure that it doesn't happen this weekend as well.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Gonna go to Jerry Jordan from Kicking the Tires.
Hey, Ryan, and I'll get one for you in a minute, Tony. When you first got into this, you talked about you wanted to compete and you didn't just want to go out there and run. Obviously, and you also wanted to have fun. Talk about that competition, but also talk about what makes this series fun that Tony and everybody put together to make it, fun for you guys to get out there and actually show what you've got.
I think the schedule is a big part of it. Different parts of the schedule, I guess you could say. 4 races on pavement, 2 races on dirt. They're all short tracks. It's not like we're jumping in race cars and going to Talladega or Michigan and holding it wide open and seeing if we're 0.2 of a second off, and that's the car we got. All the cars, they do such a great job of making sure that the cars are all within hundredths of a second, and that's with the same driver like David Stramier in the past, Ken Schrader testing it. So just that in itself, we all know at some point we've all been to a local go-kart track and you end up with the slow kart, right? And it's just no matter what, no matter how much fun you think you're going to have, it becomes a miserable race. And the series is not that. And I'm proud to help be a part of that. No different than Tony and all the other guys are, because that makes it fun when you're competitive and you can race against each other at the same level. It makes it fun and equal across the board. I'm not necessarily big on being equal. I always want to have an advantage, no different than Tony wants to have an advantage, or Marco or anybody else. But at the same time, you have to adapt to a race car and show your talents as to how you adapt. That makes it fun. The schedule again makes it fun. And like I said, they're some of the best drivers in the world are doing what we do, to race against, the modern day AJ Foyt of Tony Stewart, to race against a 4-time Indy 500 champion in Helio. These guys are really, really good, and good behind the wheel. It doesn't matter what they drive. So, it's just, I'm honored to be a part of that.
And Tony, I'm sure you've seen, go back and watch these press conferences. I've asked that question of several other drivers. What does it mean to you when your competitors and your drivers that you brought into this say those nice things? And then also, you are battling for a championship with Ryan. How rough are you going to make it on him tomorrow? Would you wreck Ryan to win a championship? Can you be black flag?
Feeling that might come into play today, but reckon my mom's a little different. She doesn't hit near as hard as Ryan can, and Ryan's way bigger than me. So at this point, here's the thing: we've been teammates for a long time. We've been friends for years. This is what you would consider an ideal situation, I think, for both of us to be racing each other for a championship. And he's got a pretty good point lead, but like we said, anything can happen. If all of a sudden he gets spun around on the pace lap, you'll probably know it was probably me, because that may be the best shot I've got at catching him before they drop the green. But, it's I think it's fun for us to have this opportunity, and you want it to be about who does the best job over 6 weeks. And, we both put ourselves in a position to mathematically, he's done a great job getting himself where he is, obviously. I had a couple rough races where, I've had to fight back to get myself mathematically back in the hunt. but it is fun to be racing somebody that's a good friend of yours that you're one of the two of you. And I think, I don't even know if Marco is even mathematically in the equation, but it is cool for the two of us to be in this situation and racing each other for a championship, knowing that one of us is going to bring it home. So but as far as hearing the compliments, that's exactly what this series was about. I mean, that the reaction to hearing everybody's comments, it makes me smile, and I think it makes Don Hawk smile, Sandy, George, Ray, all of us. That's what this was designed for. This was designed to be a fun series where we're not just stuck with the car that we're given. We have the opportunity with crew chiefs to have a small amount of changes to tune it to our driving styles and to our needs, and then we get to battle it out on the racetrack. So, I think over the course of 3 years, we have absolutely hit the mark on what this series was designed for. And it was to showcase some of the greatest race car drivers in the world and, have a good time doing it. And being able to, we have 2 motorhomes that the entire fields is sharing. So when we're not in the cars, we're all together in one of these 2 motorhomes, and occasionally we'll drift over to the other one. But, hearing the stories, and it's one of the things that I kind of wish everybody could see the camaraderie. But at the same time, if we put a camera in there and microphones, I don't think it would be what it is. But I can tell you from 3 years being in this series, the conversations off the track in the motorhomes are priceless. Just hearing some of your heroes talking about their lives and what they're doing, what they've been doing. Like Ryan said, when you get Castroneves and Tony Kanaan in the same bus together, you just sit down and grab a beverage and enjoy the show, because those two talking to each other is a show by itself. So, all the things that go into the race day. I mean, there's a lot of downtime for us between practice and the actual event. And some of those moments behind the scenes with each other and getting caught up with each other and telling stories has been some of the best parts. I just wish it could be part of the show, but like I said, I don't think it would. I don't think it would be quite as organic if we all knew there were cameras in there.
Thank you both of y'all. I appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Going to go to Mitchell Brewer.
Ryan, you have a big points lead going into tomorrow's race. I was just curious if your mindset at all changes, especially for the heat races tomorrow, just because of how chaotic we saw how last week's heat races were.
Yeah, I think if I remember right, I drew 5 to start the first heat race, which is, a good place to start. And in my position, a good place to finish. But at the same time, if you get shuffled back with the invert, you have to keep that in mind, so that if you have keep your fenders on it, keep a good car, so that, you can take advantage of that invert. It costs you, for the overall start of the feature. But, there's 2 good opportunities in the heat races to learn about your race car, learn about the racetrack. Again, I think a lot of us, maybe Tony and Kenny are the only ones, or both Kennys, I guess, are the only ones that probably have raced this racetrack. So I think for a lot of us, it's going to be a lot of learning experience and seeing what the racetrack does and adjusting our driving style, driving lines. It'll be interesting if it's, right around the bottom, right around the top, or if we can make, 2 defined racing grooves out of it. And we won't know until we get there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mitchell. Going to go over to Dave Hoffman from Speed Sport.
Andrew, thanks for taking the time, guys. I got one for Ryan and Tony. I'll start with Ryan. Just, you've been one of the more consistent drivers in the series since joining last year. What is it about this car that suits your driving style, and regardless of the track type?
I guess 2 things about the car, and I think Tony can add to this, but the car itself reminds me of how we kind of started in the Cup Series. 4 conventional springs, no bump stops, nothing really fancy about it, other than the fact that it's pretty dialed in and really close to what we need to get started. And the second part of it is the style of race is very similar to kind of what we grew up doing with the USAC Silver Crown Series, with basically 75 and 100 lappers, and conserving your tires and being there at the end is more important than leading a bunch of laps. So those 2 things, I think, combined just kind of fit me more so. And I guess maybe at the same time, it reminds me a little bit of the Whelen modified cars, which are roughly the same kind of tire, roughly the same kind of race, where same thing happens. You have to conserve and be there in the end.
And for Tony, I mean, you've had your highs and lows this year on the asphalt side of things. Can you pinpoint why that's kind of been this year? Because I know in previous years you just were ultra consistent. And is there something you can pinpoint to that?
Yeah, and it's in no way disrespect to Goodyear. I think the switch from bias ply to radial caught me off guard a little bit. It feels a lot more like what we used to have in the Cup Series, obviously, but like Ryan said, I mean, with the twist of, we don't have the bump stops and all that. So trying to figure out what I need to do with this tire versus what we had the last 2 years with the bias ply, I think has been a little bit of a challenge for me in trying to figure out exactly what I need to do to my race car to suit my driving style. Obviously last week at Eldora, I mean, I was so caught off guard. I didn't even know we had a radial dirt tire till we got there. I thought we were on the same bias ply we'd been on, but literally the pace was so fast last week compared to 2 years ago. We were 2 seconds faster last week at Eldora than we were 2 years before that. So just trying to learn the tire, I think, has been the hardest thing. And I don't do any pavement racing anymore. So trying to figure that out has been a little bit of a challenge. But when we got back on the dirt, it was something somewhat familiar for me.
Awesome. Thank you guys both. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, David. We're going to go to Holly Kane.
So to Ryan and to Tony, how are you guys?
Good.
Good, Holly. How are you?
Good. Tony, this is for you. Has this all shifted kind of from you asking people to come and race in SRX to people asking you if you got a spot for them? And has there been one form of motorsport doing that more? The IndyCar guys like, hey, we want in, or the drag racers, they've done well. You've got a lot of big, huge NASCAR names. You've got Ryan doing this. What's kind of the feel now and going forward with the series?
Yeah, it's been all the above. We've had people reaching out from everywhere. Former drivers in NASCAR, drivers in IndyCar, drivers in NHRA with Cruz Petragon and Ron Capps, who used to have run the Prelude to the Dream at Eldora in the past, want to be a part of it. We've had a ton of interest from drivers this year. Like we said, moving to Thursday night was a huge asset in that capacity. It just took a lot of the scheduling conflicts out versus Saturday night. So we've got way more drivers that are interested than we have cars right now. And that's probably my biggest regret, because the amount of guys that have reached out wanting to, even if it's just to do one race next year, it has been phenomenal. So it tells us that we're doing the right things when they're watching these races 3 years in a row now and still have that kind of interest from these drivers wanting to be a part of it. Makes us smile from the standpoint that we feel like we're doing it right to have that kind of interest. So, but it's been across the board, honestly, Holly. It's been overwhelming, the amount of drivers that have reached out and want to be a part of this.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Holly. We're going to go to Ali Ross.
Hey guys, so how do we expect this car to race here at Lucas Oil this week? How did the car do in testing, and how do we expect to see this car race on this semi-banked half mile?
I can tell you from my side, I know the same amount of information you know. I haven't, Ryan and I, neither one of us have been to Lucas Oil. I've seen it on TV. Obviously, it's a beautiful facility. Excited to be there, but you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's kind of the best part about this scenario of Ryan and I racing for a championship is we've never been there before, never competed there before. And we're going to go settle a championship at a racetrack that we're going into blind. So I think that's going to make it kind of fun.
I can maybe help there if you want. The racetrack, when we tested it, is about half a second to 7/10 of a second quicker than Eldora, but it makes sense because it is a shorter track. It's 3/8 of a mile. It's not banked the same, but this place is beautiful. The other thing is, just FYI, we are going to have the availability of a competition caution early in the race to make sure the grills are clean, make sure we don't have a problem like last week. And the other thing to touch on to previous question where Tony talked about the amount of drivers, I believe we just broke a record this year, because when Davenport takes the green flag this year, 26 different drivers will be in SRX cars just in 2023 alone. 26 different drivers will have competed in SRX in 2023. And we said no, or they said no, can I do it next year, to another dozen. So Tony's right. I mean, from Travis Pastrana, I mean, I can add names to his names, right? Ken Block. I mean, there's just a big list of genres of motorsports that want it in. And the good news for me is I got Tony Stewart to call up and say, what do I do now? And then he gets a phone call from him and we say, can we work it out next year? So I just wanted to give you that information to help on a couple of those questions.
All right. And then I got one last one here for Ryan Newman. You haven't been to this racetrack, and Tony Stewart has won every dirt race in SRX except for one. How do you beat him?
Well, you know, after he spins me out in the heat races, I can always take that 15-minute break and lock him into an outhouse and figure out some other way to handle the situation, just due to my body size, you know. No, I really just look forward to the opportunity to go there and race. And, you know, we had a pretty good 2 or 3 lap battle at Eldora, trading slide jobs back and forth. And I look forward to that opportunity again to race. We know we race hard together. We typically always do our best to race clean together, even though there's, you know, Rubbin's racing, but at the same time, we want to be there to put on a show for the fans. You got other outliers too. Don't forget Kenny Schrader's coming off a victory. I think it was on Sunday in the Pinty's Tour. So he's probably as high emotionally on a dirt track as he's been in a long time. So yeah, we may be talking about some other people besides us in the end.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely want to add to that. Kenny Schrader, Kenny Wallace, Clint Boyer, these are all guys that Kenny Wallace didn't have a dirt background until he retired from NASCAR, and Schrader and I convinced him that there was a bigger, better world out there, that underneath the grass and the sod was dirt, and that it was a lot of fun. And now he's fallen in love with it. But there's guys that have a deep dirt background. Davenport this week, I mean, we have a strong contingent of dirt track drivers that are going to race this weekend. So it's there isn't going to be anything easy about this week.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Allie. Gonna go to Jerry Bunkowski from Auto Week.
Yeah, hi, Tony. I had 2 questions for you real quick here. You talked about earlier about how if you guys had more staff, bigger budget, etc., if all your dreams came true and you were able to do a series like you always wanted to do and had all the money in the world, all the cars in the world, etc., what would the SRX series look like to you at that point? I mean, would we be talking 10 races? Would we be talking like every other week for 10 weeks or something like that? I mean, what's your dream list, if you will?
Yeah, I think it would look like a 20 to 24 car field each week. I definitely would be interested in a 8 to 10 week schedule. And the reason that not longer than that is because I feel like we have a little bit of interest from overseas to bring the SRX series over there. And I think doing a 10 or 12 race schedule in the US and then having time to re-rack, get everything ready, make sure that we have plenty of cars, parts, everything that we would need to go on an overseas trip like that, and repeat the same thing with 8 or 10 races. That would be an ultimate deal for me, where, in the winter, when everybody's got downtime, we could go somewhere nice and warm and have a lot of fun doing the same show that we do here in the US.
I liked it. My other question for you, and this could be the biggest question you're going to face today. What if has Mrs. Stewart said to you, I want to kick your ass on a track? Has Leah talked to you about racing in the SRX series?
She has, and I told her no. I've rode with her in a street car, so it scares the shit out of me. So I can only imagine. I mean, I'm doing this for Ryan and Marco's behalf. I'm trying to look out for these guys. I'm kidding. Leah's expressed a little bit of interest in it. We are interested if we have a situation like we had this spring where we can take a car to a track somewhere close to the Charlotte area and give drivers an opportunity to some of these drivers came and weren't 100% certain whether they wanted to be a part of it or not. And then, once they got in the car and had a chance to drive it, committed after that. And I definitely would be interested in taking Leah to a test session where she could get some laps and figure it out, and we could watch her as well. She's a great teacher in the drag racing realm. She has a very different driving style than a lot of us have. And, but she's ran some F2000 stuff. Went to some schools and did well there. So, I think it would definitely be something that would be fun. I don't know if it would be fun for me to have to race with my wife. I feel like it's for the same reason in drag racing. People are asking me why I'm not running a top fuel car. And if I beat her, that's just an e-ticket to go straight to the couch and sleep. So I just don't see a huge benefit from my standpoint to have to race against my wife.
So I guess is it safe to say that Tony Stewart has never been intimidated by any other race car driver in any other series, but if his wife decides to race against him, he might be a little intimidated?
I wouldn't be intimidated on the racetrack. I would be intimidated at the fallout after the race of what falls and what my future holds after that.
Exactly. Thanks, Tony. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks. Lastly, we're going to go to Lee Spencer.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Just kind of curious, Superstar, clearly, first name of the series, but would there be the possibility of a senior tour? I mean, I've been to the races. I know what kind of draw Haley brings in, but could you ever foresee something even when, Newman gets a little older, because he's still a spring chicken compared to us, but Earnhardt was his prime when he was Ryan's age. Where, could you possibly see a tour that featured, guys after they leave their series, kind of like what we have with SRX, but maybe, expanding that?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the reason it's Superstar Racing Experiences, there's superstars no matter what their age is. I don't think it's necessarily about just being a seniors tour of guys that predominantly the majority of the field are retired race car drivers from full-time racing, but that's why Haley's a part of it. I mean, Haley is a superstar. I mean, she has a huge following. Like I mentioned last week, she does an amazing job on dirt tracks. I remember when we brought her to Knoxville in year one, and she had a truck race that she was coming in from, missed practice the night before, literally got 3 laps of practice and was already on pace. Her and I swapped the lead back and forth during the first heat race, and she podiumed the very first event with SRX that she ran with us. So I'm very high on her. I know what she's capable of doing, especially, like I said, on the dirt tracks. And that's part of the reason we don't want to just be a quote unquote senior tour. I know our age says we're that old, but if you hang around us all, you'll realize we don't act our age. And some of us, including myself, have never acted my age. So I don't know that I want to think about a seniors tour as much as I want to think about superstars of motorsports that we have that opportunity, whether no matter what their age is, to be a part of this series with us.
I just see you winning, and I see Schrader winning. I mean, Red Farmer's a whole different ballgame, but of all the things that you've owned, organized, run, whether it's race teams, racing series, race tracks, how have the challenges that you have faced with SRX differ from the rest, and what have you learned from those that you've taken to SRX, just to make it better?
Well, I think it's kind of been a process that as this has gone on, we've grown and we've made adjustments. Every year after the season's over, the first thing we do is let all of our staff, including Hawk, go on a well-deserved vacation, because what these guys and gals go through for 6 weeks is unbelievable. But we ask them before they go on their vacation to make a list while it's fresh on their minds. What can we do different? What can we do better? and what do they feel like were the variables of the equation that we did correctly and that they felt most proud of. So we try to get that list before they all go on vacation. I like to look at that list and think about it while they're gone. And then once everybody gets back, the small group of us get together and talk about changes and what we can do to just continue to grow the series and make it better and stronger and make it to where it's the best experience possible for not only the drivers that come and participate, but the race fans that are watching. So we try to look at it from every aspect and make sure that we're trying to take care of all the variables and all the people and principles involved.
Super. Thank you so much for your time. Good luck tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. And then lastly, I see our CEO, Don Hawk's hand raised, so I don't know if you have anything to add.
My hand's raised because I bumped the button, but I just want to tell everybody thank you very much. I'm looking forward to tomorrow night. One other thing I thought of, there is a mathematical possibility for Marco to win in response to Tony's answer to a question. That only plays into the issue if Ryan Newman does not show up. So, Ryan, are you going to be here tomorrow?
I'd like to say 100% for sure, but I am flying in with Keselowski. So unless there's some kind of behind the scenes action going on, I will be there to the best of my abilities.
Well, you pretty much got to start your engine and start the heat. But mathematically, if you're not here, Marco's in play against Tony. So you better get here.
I don't consider that to be an option.
Thank you, everybody. And it's been a pleasure to work with these guys. And Haley, I got to tell you, I'm one of the most blessed of men because this is fun. It's hard work, but it's a lot of fun. And you get to a place like Lucas Oil, where when you get here, this place is phenomenal. You get to work with a guy like Johnny Morris, who's taken this race really, really serious because his company headquarters is close to here. And then you have other sponsors like Purdue and South Point, Michael Gaughan, that step in, and Camping World's been there for us every year with Marco Simonis. I'm having a blast, and it's to see what we can do next. And like Tony said, we ask everybody for feedback. We don't throw it in the garbage can. We actually read it, study it, and try to make it better. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. And just on behalf of the ownership group, I just want to take a second and be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to thank Hawk, our CEO, and all the drivers. I think this series is what it is because we have the best in the world doing this, and we're proud to be associated with Tony and Ryan and appreciate everyone's pride and passion in making SRX a fun racing destination. And we're really just proud of the feedback we've gotten from the fans and the feedback from the media, and look forward to many good moments ahead. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you Thursday night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.